What is it about old bridges that stirs something deep within us, as if the air itself carries whispers from another time? There's one bridge, in particular, that seems to breathe unease into the hearts of those who dare approach it. Known only as the Phantom Bridge, it arches over a river so dark its waters seem to drink the moonlight whole. Locals speak of it in hushed tones, their voices trembling with half-believed warnings and ghostly accounts. Tonight you'll hear of the shadowy figure that lingers there, waiting for the unwary. By the time we're done, you might think twice about crossing any bridge at night. The air grows colder with each step closer to its weathered planks, and the mist begins to rise from the river below. Something walks here, something that never truly left. Keep listening if you dare, because the secrets of the Phantom Bridge are darker than you could imagine. As we pull back the veil of time, the story of how the Phantom Bridge came to be takes shape, shrouded in equal parts mystery and foreboding. Centuries ago, long before the river became a silent witness to tragedy, a reclusive man known only as Elias Thorne arrived in the village. Some say he was a genius driven by obsession, while others whispered he was something darker, a man touched by forces beyond comprehension. What is certain is that Thorne was hired to build a bridge strong enough to withstand the river's fierce currents, yet his methods were anything but ordinary. Villagers spoke of strange rituals conducted under the cover of night, with chanting voices rising like smoke from the construction site. Rumors spread of sacrifices made to ensure the bridge's durability, and it was said that Thorne angered the spirits of the land by disturbing sacred grounds. Whether these tales hold truth or are mere fabrications, one thing remains undeniable. The bridge was completed, but at a cost. Some believe it carries a curse, one that has lingered in the form of shadowy figures and chilling encounters ever since. And now, with this foundation laid, let's delve deeper into the first reported sighting that turned local whispers into full-blown dread. Stepping into the heart of the mystery, we arrive at the first chilling encounter that would forever change how people viewed the Phantom Bridge. It was a night much like any other, or so it seemed, with the moon casting its pale light over the river. A weary traveler named Thomas, returning from a neighboring town, found himself crossing the bridge just as the hour grew late. The air was still, unnervingly so, as though the world itself held its breath. Each step he took echoed louder than it should, the sound of his boots against the wood stretching into an almost unbearable silence. Then it happened. He saw it, a shadow darker than the night around it, standing motionless at the center of the bridge. It was no ordinary silhouette. The figure seemed to absorb the moonlight, leaving a void where it stood. Thomas froze, his breath catching in his throat. The temperature plummeted in an instant, an unnatural cold creeping through his cloak and biting at his skin. He tried to call out, but his voice refused to come, and just as suddenly as it appeared, the shadow dissolved into nothingness, leaving only the oppressive stillness behind. Shaken to his core, Thomas fled the bridge, his heart pounding like a drum in the dead of night. From that moment on, whispers of the shadow spread like wildfire, transforming local curiosity into an unshakable dread that loomed over the village. Yet, as unsettling as this encounter was, it was only the beginning of the bridge's dark legacy. Now, let's turn our attention to the river below, where even darker secrets lie hidden beneath its deceptively calm surface. As we shift our gaze from the shadowy figure that haunts the bridge above, we find ourselves drawn to the river below, whose tranquil surface hides a past steeped in sorrow and mystery. For centuries, this river has been more than just a body of water. It has been a silent witness to countless tragedies that have unfolded along its banks. Fishermen still speak in hushed tones about the young woman who vanished one foggy evening, her basket of herbs left abandoned on the shore. Villagers searched for days, but the river yielded no answers, only an eerie quiet that seemed to deepen with each passing hour. Then there was the merchant ship that capsized under inexplicable circumstances, its crew swallowed whole by the currents, leaving behind only fragments of timber and unanswered questions. Some say the river's pull is unnatural, a force driven by something far darker than mere water and stone. Over time, these stories coalesced into whispers of a curse, one that ties the restless spirits of the departed to the bridge itself. Locals believe the anguish of those lost to the river has seeped into the very foundations of the structure, creating a nexus where sorrow and malevolence intertwine. It's said that the spirits linger not out of choice, but out of desperation, their cries for peace drowned out by the ceaseless flow of the water. And so, as the bridge became a conduit for their torment, it also became a place where the living tread with caution, wary of awakening forces they cannot hope to understand. With this grim legacy woven into its waters, the question remains what unseen power truly stirs beneath the surface, and how does it shape the haunting presence that lingers above? Yet the origins of these malevolent forces may hold more answers than one might expect, as glimpses into the architect's secret diary reveal unsettling truths waiting to be uncovered. As we delve deeper into the mystery, a discovery emerges that sheds chilling light on the bridge's dark origins. Buried beneath layers of earth near the base of the structure, a weathered journal was unearthed decades later, its pages brittle and ink faded but still legible. This was no ordinary diary. It belonged to the enigmatic architect himself, whose name has long been lost to time. Within its entries lie fragments of guilt and dread, offering a glimpse into the mind of the man who dared to build where others feared to tread. One passage reads, "I have trespassed upon grounds not meant for man's ambition. The earth here breathes with an ancient pulse, and I fear what I have awakened will not rest." Another cryptic note warns, "When the sun retreats and shadows stretch long, do not linger upon my creation. They walk now, those I disturbed, and their gaze carries a weight no soul can bear." These words paint a haunting picture of a man grappling with the consequences of his work, regretting the disruption of what he calls sacred land. His warnings suggest that the spirits tied to the bridge are not random, but directly connected to his actions, perhaps even bound by forces he could not control. With each revelation from these fragmented writings, the connection between the architect's remorse and the malevolent presence on the bridge becomes clearer, leaving us to wonder just how deeply his choices shaped the curse that still lingers today. And yet, as unsettling as these entries are, they only scratch the surface of the deeper secrets waiting to be unraveled about those who dared cross the bridge and never returned. As the tale of the architect's remorseful warnings lingers in the air, another chapter of the bridge's dark history unfolds, one that strikes even closer to the hearts of those who hear it. It begins on a night bathed in silvery moonlight, when a young couple, drawn by curiosity, or perhaps love's blindness to danger, decided to cross the Phantom Bridge. Their names were Emma and Daniel, locals who had grown up hearing the whispers of its curse, but dismissed them as mere superstition. That decision, as we now know, would seal their fate in a way no one could have anticipated. The couple was last seen by a fisherman casting his line near the riverbank. He recalled how their laughter carried across the water, light and carefree, before the sound abruptly ceased, swallowed by the oppressive stillness that followed. Hours later, when they failed to return home, a search party was organized, combing the area with lanterns and shouts that echoed into the void. What they found, or rather, what they didn't find, only deepened the mystery. There was no sign of Emma or Daniel, no trace of struggle, nothing to explain their sudden disappearance. Yet there were clues, though they brought more questions than answers. A single shoe, presumably Emma's, was discovered floating downstream, its laces tangled in the reeds. It seemed impossibly undamaged, as if placed there deliberately rather than swept away by the current. Stranger still were the accounts from the searchers themselves, many of whom reported hearing faint whispers emanating from the bridge. Some claimed the voices called out names, others swore they heard pleading, but all agreed on one thing: the words were unintelligible, carried on a cold breeze that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Theories swirled in the wake of this chilling event. Some believed the couple had fallen victim to the restless spirits said to haunt the bridge, their lives claimed as punishment for daring to trespass under the moon's watchful gaze. Others speculated that the bridge itself was alive, a malevolent force that fed on the fear and despair of those who dared cross it. Whatever the truth, the unanswered questions only added to the growing legend of the Phantom Bridge, leaving behind a story that continues to send shivers down the spines of anyone brave enough to hear it. But as unsettling as this tale may be, it is far from the only one tied to the shadows that loom over the river, and soon we'll uncover the efforts made by skeptics and scientists who dared to challenge the supernatural claims surrounding this cursed structure. As the legend of the Phantom Bridge grew, whispers of its otherworldly phenomena reached ears less inclined to believe in ghosts and curses. Among them was a team of researchers and skeptics determined to strip away the mystery with cold, hard science. Their goal was simple yet ambitious: to unravel the secrets of the Phantom Bridge using tools that measured what the naked eye could not. Armed with an array of equipment, thermal cameras, audio recorders, and devices designed to detect even the faintest vibrations, they descended upon the site, resolved to either confirm or debunk the eerie tales once and for all. The investigation began with methodical precision. The team set up stations along the bridge, mapping out areas where sightings and strange occurrences had been reported most frequently. Thermal imaging cameras scanned for heat signatures that might indicate the presence of lingering spirits, or perhaps something more mundane, like animals or drafts. Sound wave analyzers recorded every rustle of leaves, every creak of the wooden planks, searching for anomalies that couldn't be explained by natural causes. For hours they worked in silence, their flashlights cutting through the thick mist that clung stubbornly to the river below, and at first the results were disappointingly ordinary. The data showed nothing beyond the expected: a few temperature drops, the usual ambient noise, and the occasional echo carried by the wind. But then came their final night on the bridge, a night that would leave even the most hardened skeptic questioning their convictions. As midnight approached, the air grew unnervingly still, the kind of stillness that presses against your ears and makes your skin prickle. It was during this eerie calm that the equipment began to act strangely. Thermal cameras captured fleeting patches of cold, impossibly cold, that moved in erratic patterns across the bridge. At the same time, the audio recorders picked up something far more unsettling, a low, guttural whisper that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere. The team played back the recording, their faces pale as they strained to decipher the muffled words, which seemed to shift and distort each time they listened. What happened next was even more baffling. One of the researchers, a physicist named Dr. Harper, had brought along a device designed to measure electromagnetic frequencies. As she monitored its readings, the screen began to spike erratically, showing bursts of energy that shouldn't have been possible in such a remote location. Then, without warning, the device shut off completely, its screen going dark despite a full charge. When she tried to restart it, the device emitted a high-pitched whine before falling silent again. Meanwhile, a member of the team, standing near the edge of the bridge, claimed to have seen something out of the corner of his eye, a shadowy figure, tall and thin, that dissolved into the mist before he could fully turn to look. Though nothing definitive was proven that night, the team's findings left them divided. Some argued that the anomalies could be explained by environmental factors or equipment malfunctions, while others admitted that certain events defied logical explanation. What was clear, however, was that the Phantom Bridge retained its hold over those who dared to investigate it. And as the researchers packed up their gear and left the site, one question lingered heavy in the air. If science couldn't provide answers, then what, or who, was truly responsible for the shadows that haunted the bridge? With their data in hand, the team departed, but their unsettling experience only added another layer to the chilling mystery, setting the stage for further exploration into the Phantom's purpose and origins. As we venture deeper into the heart of this mystery, it's time to consider what drives the shadowy figure to linger on the Phantom Bridge, what compels it to haunt this desolate stretch of wood and stone night after night. While no definitive answers have emerged, several theories have taken shape, each more unsettling than the last. One possibility is that the figure is the restless spirit of someone who met a tragic end in the river's unforgiving currents. Historical records reveal countless tales of lives lost beneath the bridge, from accidental drownings to deliberate acts of malice. Could one of these souls, wronged in life, now seek acknowledgement or revenge? Some locals believe the Phantom is a fisherman who vanished during a storm, his boat overturned and his body never recovered. Others whisper of a traveler who fell victim to bandits and was left to the mercy of the river. If this theory holds true, the figure's presence might be a cry for justice, or perhaps a warning to others of the dangers that lurk nearby. But there's another, darker possibility. What if the shadow isn't a victim at all, but a guardian of sorts, determined to protect the bridge from those unworthy of crossing? This idea draws from the architect's cryptic diary, which hinted at sacred grounds disturbed during construction. Could the figure be an ancient spirit, bound to the bridge as punishment for humanity's intrusion? If so, its actions might not be random, but deliberate, targeting individuals who show disrespect or ill intent. Reports of travelers feeling an overwhelming sense of dread before seeing the shadow lend some weight to this theory, suggesting the Phantom has a way of sensing the inner turmoil of those who approach. Of course, not everyone agrees with these supernatural explanations. Skeptics point to psychological factors, arguing that the bridge's oppressive atmosphere and isolation can distort perceptions, creating illusions of movement or shadow. They suggest the reported sightings could simply be manifestations of fear, amplified by the bridge's grim reputation. Yet even they struggle to explain the anomalies captured by scientific equipment, a fact that leaves room for doubt and fuels further speculation. Ultimately, the phantom's purpose remains shrouded in mystery, a puzzle with pieces that don't quite fit together. Is it a tormented, soul-seeking piece, a vengeful entity exacting punishment, or something else entirely? Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in between, a blend of human tragedy and otherworldly intervention. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: the shadow on the bridge is no mere figment of imagination. And as we move closer to hearing first-hand accounts from those who have encountered it, the line between legend and reality grows thinner still. As we shift our focus from speculation to first-hand experiences, a new layer of the mystery begins to unfold. The accounts of those who have stood where shadow meets substance paint a vivid and chilling picture, one that blurs the boundaries between fear and fact. Their stories, though varied, share eerie similarities that cannot be easily dismissed, leaving us to wonder, what did they truly see on the Phantom Bridge? Take the case of Emma, a nurse who was driving home late one evening when her car broke down near the bridge. With no other choice, she decided to cross on foot. She describes the moment she reached the midpoint of the bridge, a sudden stillness in the air, as if the world itself had paused. Then came the sensation of eyes boring into her back, though she was utterly alone. When she turned to look, she swears she saw two glowing orbs hovering above the railing, unblinking and unnatural. It wasn't just the dark playing tricks, she insists. They followed me until I reached the other side. Another witness, a fisherman named Harold, recounts a different but equally unsettling encounter. He had been casting his line into the river when he noticed something odd in the water's reflection. Instead of his own silhouette, he saw a towering figure standing directly behind him. But when he spun around, there was nothing there, only the empty expanse of the bridge stretching into the night. The worst part wasn't what I saw, Harold admits. It was the sound, a low, guttural whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Recurring themes emerge from these accounts, binding them together like threads in a tapestry of terror. Many describe the phantom as having an almost magnetic pull, drawing them closer despite their instincts screaming to turn back. Others mention the distorted reflections, where ordinary shapes twist into grotesque forms under the moonlight. And then there's the feeling of being watched, a sensation so intense it leaves some too frightened to move, as though invisible eyes are dissecting their every thought. Strangely, not all encounters end in fear. A young student named Lucy recalls crossing the bridge with her dog during a power outage. At first, the usual chill crept over her, and she heard faint murmurs carried by the wind. But instead of dread, she felt an overwhelming sadness, a sorrow so profound it brought tears to her eyes. I didn't feel threatened, she says. I felt mourned, like I was standing in the presence of something that had lost everything. These stories, told by ordinary people living ordinary lives, add a layer of humanity to the legend of the Phantom Bridge. They remind us that the line between myth and reality is often thinner than we realize. As we piece together their testimonies, one question continues to loom large. Why do so many report the same details, even when separated by time and circumstance? The answer may lie not in what the witnesses saw, but in what they felt, a connection to something ancient, unyielding, and deeply tied to the bridge itself. And as we move toward the next chapter, where attempts to destroy the bridge reveal even darker truths, the weight of these accounts presses heavier on our understanding. As the shadowy encounters mounted and fear gripped the community, whispers of a drastic solution began to spread. What if the bridge itself was the source of the haunting? This question sparked a movement among the townsfolk, fueled by desperation and a longing for peace. But their efforts to tear down the phantom bridge would reveal that some structures are not meant to be unmade. The first attempt came in the spring of 1985, when a group of determined locals pooled their resources to hire a demolition crew. Armed with sledgehammers, drills, and heavy machinery, they arrived at dawn, ready to dismantle the ancient structure piece by piece. Yet almost immediately, things went awry. A crane intended to lift sections of the bridge collapsed without warning, injuring no one but rendering the equipment useless. Workers reported an unnatural vibration beneath their feet, as though the bridge were alive and resisting their efforts. By midday, every tool brought to the site had failed in some inexplicable way. Blades dulled, engines sputtered, and cords snapped as if sabotaged by unseen hands. Eventually, the crew abandoned the project, leaving behind a scene more chaotic than they had found it. Undeterred, another attempt was made 2 decades later, this time spearheaded by a younger generation eager to prove the skeptics wrong. They employed modern technology, including hydraulic excavators and laser-guided cutting tools, believing science could triumph where brute force had faltered. But once again, the bridge seemed to fight back. On the second day of work, a sudden storm rolled in, unlike anything weather forecasters had predicted. Lightning struck the machinery repeatedly, causing irreparable damage, while torrents of rain turned the riverbank into a slippery, treacherous mess. One worker narrowly escaped injury when a support beam inexplicably dislodged and crashed mere inches from him. Within hours, the project was shut down, and the equipment sat rusting near the riverbank, a grim testament to the futility of their endeavor. Amid these struggles, the townsfolk sought guidance from their elders, who had long warned against meddling with the bridge. An elderly woman named Edith, whose family had lived in the area for generations, recounted an old tale passed down through her ancestors. She spoke of a pact made centuries ago between the original builders and the spirits of the river, a pact sealed with sacrifices and promises never to disturb the sacred grounds. "The bridge is not just stone and wood," she said solemnly. "It is bound to something far older and deeper than any of us can comprehend. To destroy it would be to awaken wrath beyond measure." Her words carried weight, especially after the repeated failures, and many began to wonder if she was right. Despite these warnings, a final attempt was made in 2010, led by a wealthy developer, convinced that progress could conquer superstition. He dismissed the stories as nonsense and vowed to replace the crumbling relic with a sleek, modern crossing. Yet even his resolve crumbled under the weight of strange occurrences. During the initial survey, instruments malfunctioned, providing wildly inaccurate readings about the bridge's dimensions and stability. Later, during construction, workers reported hearing faint laughter echoing from the empty air and seeing shadows dart across the scaffolding when no one was there. Perhaps most chillingly, a photograph taken on the site revealed a figure standing on the bridge in broad daylight, a figure that no one present remembered seeing. The developer, unnerved and facing mounting costs, finally relented and cancelled the project altogether. These attempts to destroy the Phantom Bridge serve as a haunting reminder that some mysteries are better left untouched. Each failure deepened the legend, reinforcing the belief that the bridge is not merely a physical structure, but a gateway, or perhaps a prison for forces beyond human understanding. As we prepare to explore what survival might mean for those brave enough to cross its weathered planks, remember this: sometimes the greatest danger lies not in facing fear, but in trying to erase it entirely. With the attempts to destroy the bridge having failed so disastrously, the question remains, what if you find yourself compelled to cross it regardless? Crossing the Phantom Bridge is no ordinary feat, and those who dare to step onto its worn planks must prepare themselves for more than just the creak of aged wood beneath their feet. If you are among the brave or foolhardy few, listen closely, because survival on this cursed span demands more than just courage. It requires respect, strategy, and perhaps a touch of superstition. One of the first things whispered about in hushed tones by those who claim to have crossed the bridge is the importance of timing. Locals say that twilight, when the sun dips just below the horizon, but the moon has not yet risen, is the safest hour to attempt the crossing. Why, they believe this fleeting moment confuses the spirits, giving travelers a slim advantage against detection. However, once full darkness falls, the bridge becomes a hunting ground where shadows grow sharper and the air heavier with an unshakable chill. Whatever you do, avoid stepping foot on the bridge during a full moon. Tales abound of travelers vanishing without a trace whenever the moonlight bathes the river in silver. If you decide to press forward, it is said that carrying certain talismans can offer protection. A small bag of salt carried in your pocket, thrown behind you in a wide arc as you approach the midpoint of the bridge, may ward off lurking entities. Salt, after all, has long been revered as a purifying element across cultures. Another talisman often mentioned is a piece of iron, a nail, perhaps, or even a simple ring worn close to your skin. Iron is believed to disrupt supernatural forces, though whether this will be enough to shield you from the bridge's wrath remains uncertain. Some go so far as to craft makeshift charms using black thread and 9 knots, each tied while reciting a whispered plea for safe passage. These practices, though unproven, seem to provide a psychological anchor against the overwhelming dread many feel while crossing. Even with these precautions, the path you choose is critical. The center of the bridge, where the wooden planks sag most noticeably and the mist thickens into an impenetrable fog, is considered the most dangerous point. It is here that witnesses report hearing disembodied whispers, their own names called out in voices both familiar and distorted. To mitigate this peril, elders advise walking along the edges of the bridge instead of its centerline, keeping one hand lightly pressed against the railing. This gesture is thought to ground you, tethering your presence to the physical realm rather than letting it drift into the spectral currents that swirl invisibly around you. One peculiar piece of advice involves mirroring the behavior of animals. If you encounter creatures near the bridge, an owl perched silently on a nearby tree branch, or fish leaping from the water, pay close attention to their movements. Animals, locals insist, possess an instinctive awareness of danger. Should they suddenly flee or freeze in place, consider turning back immediately. Their reactions could signal the approach of something far darker than mere shadows. Yet even with every precaution taken, success is never guaranteed. Countless stories describe individuals who followed all the recommended steps, yet still met with misfortune. One account tells of a man who carried a vial of holy water blessed by a priest and wore an iron pendant around his neck. He reached the other side unscathed, or so he thought. Days later, he began hearing faint footsteps trailing him everywhere he went. No matter how fast he walked, or how many times he looked over his shoulder, he could never identify the source. Eventually, the sound drove him to leave town altogether, never to return. As eerie as these tales are, there is one final warning worth heeding above all others. Never speak while on the bridge. Not a word, not a whisper, not even a muttered prayer. Sound, it seems, carries weight here, drawing the attention of whatever malevolent force resides within the structure. Many believe that the phantom itself feeds on sound, using it to locate and ensnare its victims. Silence, therefore, might be your greatest ally, or your only hope. Surviving the Phantom Bridge, if such a thing is truly possible, hinges on understanding its rules, as unpredictable and cruel as they may be. But remember this: the bridge does not forgive arrogance, nor does it tolerate disrespect. For those who reach the other side, relief is often accompanied by an unsettling realization. Their survival may come at a cost, one they might not fully comprehend until much later. And now, as we move closer to unraveling the truth behind the shadowy figure that haunts this cursed expanse, ask yourself this: are you willing to pay that price? As we bring this haunting tale to a close, the Phantom Bridge stands as a testament to both human curiosity and the chilling unknown. Its twisted history, from the architect's cryptic warnings to the tragic disappearances and eerie encounters, leaves us with more questions than answers. The legends speak of restless spirits, curses born of sacred ground, and a shadowy figure whose purpose remains shrouded in darkness. Even those who manage to cross often find themselves altered, carrying a weight they cannot explain. The bridge does not merely test your courage, it demands respect, caution, and perhaps even sacrifice. And yet, despite all the warnings, it continues to draw people in, whispering promises of adventure or answers hidden just beyond its decrepit planks. Would you risk crossing the Phantom Bridge shadows over the river, knowing what lies in wait? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Would you take the chance, or would you turn back? If you enjoyed this spine-tingling journey into the shadows, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more mysterious stories that will keep you up at night. The next tale awaits, and who knows, it might just be closer than you